Curious George in the Snow. This is George. George was a good little monkey and always very curious. One cold day, George went to the winter sports competition with his friend, the man in the yellow hat. They were outside all morning and wanted to warm up with a hot drink. At the ski lodge on the top of the mountain, the man said, "George, why don't you wait at this table while I get some hot chocolate? I'll be right back, so don't get into any trouble." George liked being on top of the mountain. There was so much to see. Why, there was something interesting. George thought it looked like a spaceship. He was curious. What was a spaceship doing on a mountain? George forgot all about waiting for the hot chocolate. Can you spot the red sled on page 5? Excellent job. That's right. Curious George is running over to the red sled on page 5. Page 6. George climbed in. A man in a racing suit saw him and said, "What are you doing with my sled?" He tried to stop George, but it was too late. The sled shot down the mountain with George inside. This is no spaceship, thought George. This is a rocket. "Stop that monkey," the man yelled. But George could not stop, and there was no one to stop him as he sped faster and faster through the snow. Suddenly, the sled slipped sideways. George didn't know how to steer. Oh, no! The sled swished through some trees and whacked into a pole. Boom! And George went flying out of the sled into the snow. Can you spot George on the sled on page 9? That's right, George is on the top of the page, on top of the sled, about to crash. Page 10. Luckily, George was not hurt, but this was not where he was supposed to be. Now, how could he get up the mountain? George looked at the sled. It was stuck by the pole. He looked up the pole. Now he could see how a little monkey could get to the top of the mountain. George climbed the pole, and when an empty seat came, he jumped right onto the seat. What a view! From up in the air, George could see everything. As he rode up the mountain, he watched tiny skiers race down. When he reached the top, George was happy to see the ski lodge. Can you spot the ski lodge on page 13? That's right, it's in the middle of page 13 at the top. Good job, everyone. This was where he was supposed to be. George found the table, but he couldn't find the man with the yellow hat. Where could he be? George looked down the mountain. There was someone who looked like his friend. Maybe his friend was going down to get George. But how could George get down the mountain this time? If only he had another sled. Can you spot the man with the yellow ski suit on? Good job, that's right. He's on a pair of yellow skis heading down the mountain. Can you find the bunny rabbit? Excellent job. That's right. The bunny rabbit is on the bottom right-hand side of page 15, next to Curious George. Nice work, everyone. Page 16. Why, here's a monkey-sized sled. George took the sled down and gave himself a push. The sled was quick to pick up speed on the steep mountain. George zigged this way and zigged that way, then another was all together. He flew over a hill and landed on the raceway. "It's a monkey," yelled a boy, and the crowd cheered. Can you find Curious George flying over top a hill? That's right, it's in the middle of page 17. Curious George is flying through the air. Nice work, everyone. Page 18. "Look out, little monkey," someone yelled from the crowd, but George was going so fast that the wind roared in his ears and he could not hear. But George could see. He saw a skier right in front of him. Could he stop? "No!" the crowd gasped as George crashed into the skier and flew up in the air. The skier went tumbling and his ski snapped right in half. When George came down, but he landed on the broken ski and he kept going. The crowd was amazed. "What is he doing?" they asked. "Is he skiing? Is he sledding?" "He's surfing in the snow," said a boy. George sailed down the mountain and came to a smooth stop. On page 20, can you find the bunny rabbit? Great job. That's right. The bunny rabbit is running out of George's way. Page 21. What a show! The crowd cheered as George took a bow. No one had seen skiing like this before. When the skier arrived, everyone was glad to see that he was not hurt, and they cheered for him too. Soon the man with the yellow hat arrived. He was glad to find George. George was finally glad to see his friend. The man with the yellow hat made his way through the noisy crowd to apologize to the skier. "I'm sorry George caused so much trouble," he said. "That's okay," said the skier. "I still have another race and another pair of skis." Then he said, "That was some good skiing, George." Later that day, the skier raced again and won. It was a new record. The crowd went wild. They were still cheering when the skier found George at the finish line. "Thanks to you, George, this big crowd stayed to cheer me on," he said. "I couldn't have won without them. Or you." He lifted George to his shoulders, and the crowd cheered once more for their favorite monkey skier, George. The end. Can you spot the skier and Curious George on page 24? That's right, they're right there in the middle of page 24. Great job, everyone.